I'm sure we can all remember the days of needing a guide just to make it through this confusing cave in the latest Pokemon game as a kid. It doesn't matter whether you're of the physical strategy guide generation or were able to just watch YouTube videos, that feeling of just not knowing where to go crosses any generational gap. Caves like this have been a staple of many Pokemon generations, testing not just your battling prowess, but also your puzzling skills and just your general sense of direction, I guess. Oh, and how dedicated you are in bringing along that Bibarel with 4 HMs. Because yeah, far from every dungeon has been a slam dunk, that's for sure. Today, I want to take a look at the worst ones, picking one for every generation. So let's get things rolling with Kanto, which has a ton of caves all across the map. They also immediately show off some of the biggest problems I've always had with them. So many Pokemon encounters, such a small view if you don't use Flash. Which, is not a good move, so you don't exactly want to teach it to your favorite team members. I have always felt way more positive about caves that didn't require Flash over those that do, which means we definitely need to look in that category for some potential worst ones. Mount Moon doesn't require Flash in order to be entirely visible, making this probably one of the only caves I've never really struggled to get through. Even as a kid, I don't remember getting stuck here. Rock Tunnel though, I have never enjoyed that. It always felt very unnecessary too, like we only just went through Mount Moon. Is another cave with plenty of the same Pokemon really necessary? Well, it's actually a little smaller than Mount Moon, it feels a lot longer, probably due to the lack of variation that the first cave has, with the Team Rocket encounters and the Fossil decision. But as much as I dislike Rock Tunnel, I don't think it's the worst. That title goes to Diglett's Cave, next to Vermilion City. Now, back in the day on the original Red and Blue, this was a heavenly location. It allowed for any Squirtle enjoyers to pick up something to defeat Lieutenant Surge with, and picking up a Dugtrio here felt like catching Mewtwo when I was a kid. But here we find the problem with this cave. It is very clearly a product of its time. Today, in the year 2024, where most people explore Kanto through Fire Red and Leaf Green or even Let's Go, this cave feels so unnecessary. An entire cave where you can only find one evolution family is insanity. Not to mention this cave leads basically nowhere new and is redundant after you get Fly and Cut. Oh, and did I mention that in the remakes, Diglett and Dugtrio can now have the ability Arena Trap, meaning you can't run away from them? That alone makes this area go from unnecessary to downright annoying. I guess it ends up being a good thing, there's as good as no reason to pass through it. Let's move on to the neighbors of Johto, which also has a lot of different caves, but if I'm being honest, I don't think there are too many memorable ones in this region. Only Mount Silver, Mount Mortar and the Tojo Falls have really left a lasting impression, I feel like. The others are just kinda there. Dark Cave does not only have a very uncreative name, it also is another dungeon suffering from requiring Flash, and has never really excited me. That said, I guess the fact that you get a little taste of it early on, only to return later is cool, and it's the easiest way to encounter some rare Pokemon like Dunsparce, Wobbuffet and Teddiursa. So while I do consider it among the worst, I don't think it is the absolute worst one. That questionable honor goes to Ice Path. I have never really had a problem with ice sliding puzzles like many people have, but I strongly dislike puzzles with strength and throwing boulders through holes. It always just feels so lame, so telegraphed. I've never enjoyed it, and unfortunately this cave is filled with them. Just like it's filled with unique Pokemon as well, like Jinx, Sneasel, Delibird and Swinub. Problem is though, that since this is a late game area, most of these Pokemon won't enter your team anyway. This cave always felt like the Seafoam Islands' less successful little brother to me, and while it is at least not too long or anything, I've never enjoyed traversing it. On to Hoenn, where we find the worst cave in the history of the Pokemon series, Altering Cave. Now, this place is also in Fire Red and Leaf Green on the Sevii Islands, but since I didn't want to include it twice, I figured I would count it for Hoenn, since the Sevii Islands aren't technically a part of Kanto. Originally, the plan for this cave was for mystery gift events to allow different Pokemon that can be found anywhere else in Hoenn to be catchable here, hence the name Altering. However, this was never actually finished and done, meaning this is now just an area where you can experience the thrill of hunting for Zubat and Zubat alone. As such, Altering Cave takes Unnecessary to the next level, to the point I'm sure even Game Freak agrees, and it is in my opinion easily the worst cave in Hoenn. Although there were some other caves that really tried to take its crown. Artisan Cave in the Battle Frontier of Emerald is very similar to Altering Cave, being 2 rooms with a few items and a grand total of 1 available Pokémon. That Pokémon was Smeargle though, which was previously unavailable in the Gen 3 GBA games, making it slightly better. Out of Ruby and Sapphire, I would say Shoal Cave is bottom of the barrel. While I like the idea of using the tides to explore it, in practice it's more annoying than anything. Especially if you always play your game around the same time of day. But anyway, Shoal Cave isn't close to Altering Cave, the grand loser of Hoenn. Next up is Sinnoh, which also has a high cave count and an even higher required amount of HMs to explore it all. And that alone makes the excavation experience of Sinnoh everything but fun. Mount Coronet is a notorious HM demander, but I could never call such an iconic area the worst in the region. On the other end of the spectrum are the Salation Ruins, which don't require HMs at all and still underdeliver. Unknown were exciting and mysterious in Gen 2, making the Ruins of Elf one of the most memorable locations in the region. But by Gen 4, the excitement had waned, and the Salation Ruins were not even close to being cool enough to recapture it. Hell, the version of Legends Arceus is better, and that's little more than a room. But at least the ruins are inoffensive at the end of the day. Wayward Cave, on the other hand, Wayward Cave is a terrible experience that no one would ever voluntarily go through if Game Freak hadn't hidden Gibble away here. It's another flash requirer, every single path looks exactly the same, and getting out of it without an escape rope often feels like it's just not gonna happen. Wayward Cave is next level annoying, probably the most annoying cave in Pokemon history. I hope Myra packed some snacks, cause I'm not coming back for her, I'll tell you that much. Unova is next, which honestly has a pretty good track record when it comes to caves. There's still a pretty high number of them, but they're nothing too bad. No more flash, much better Pokemon diversity in most of them, and pretty decent puzzles to challenge you. And so, I'd say the worst cave is one that is nothing too terrible, it just feels a little unnecessary. Relic Passage, as a cave, is nothing too exciting. It given access to Relic Castle is of course, but as a cave the list of catchable Pokemon is disappointing, the layout is nothing new, it has a few unexciting trainers, and even the items to be found here are nothing to write home about. But all these things also apply to Seaside Cave, and that doesn't lead to Relic Castle, so that ends up as the absolute worst. And to just add some additional salt to the wound, this is also one of the few places in Black and White 2 that requires an HM, being Surf, in order to progress, which was becoming more of a rarity at this point in the Pokemon series. On to Kalos, which has significantly less caves than previous generations, and the quality is also quite middling. None of them are truly offensive, but they're all kinda middle of the road. Although, they're only not offensive because I'm not sure whether I can consider the Chamber of Emptiness to be a cave. I mean, it's just one room, with 2 items and that's it. Is that a cave? I don't know, I guess it technically is, but comparing it to full-fledged caves with multiple rooms also feels a little unfair. I mean, Altering Cave has even less in it and is way bigger, so yeah. Anyway, out of the actual true caves, my least favorite is without a doubt Glittering Cave. The layout is so incredibly hallway-esque, it feels very unnatural and unexciting to explore. I guess that is a sentence you can use for many areas in Kalos, but Glittering Cave is honestly one of the worst offenders of that trope. But hey, according to Junichi Masuda, it was based on the Catacombs of Paris, so maybe Legend ZA will extend Glittering Cave and make me take back my criticism. Let's hope so. We move on to Alola, where I feel like Game Freak realized the way they were doing things with caves now didn't work anymore. The different camera positions in Sun and Moon make the few caves Alola has a lot better to navigate, but at the same time they lack the extensive design and layout that we saw in the sprite-based games. So while none are the bane of my existence like some other caves have been in the past, none are all too exciting either. For the worst one, I'm once again looking in the direction of the Diglett. I don't know who thought it was a good idea to make an homage to the worst cave in Kanto, but for some reason it happened and now we have Diglett's tunnel. Look, this cave at least has more things of note inside, like a catchable Nihilego later in the game and a rival battle against Hau, so it's not all bad, but come on. This game has so many Pokemon catchable, why can we only find Alolan Diglett and Zubat in here? Yes, as a nostalgic reference, the Diglett cave, but trust me, no one was nostalgic for the lack of Pokemon diversity in Diglett's cave. At least the Ultra games at Larvitar, that's a nice addition, not gonna lie. Next is Galar, which once and for all killed caves as they used to be. On one hand, the lack of random encounters in Sword and Shield make caves so much more bearable to explore and traverse. On the other hand, exploring the caves in the main game is basically impossible, because both Galar mines are just a straight path through. While the DLC really showed there is a ton of awesome potential in caves without random encounters, the base game completely fumbles what should be a benefit, to the point Galar Mine 1 especially is easily one of the worst caves in Pokemon history without really being annoying or irritating. Because while I may dislike those classic cave tropes, I do recognize some people love them. There is no love in Galar Mine 1, it's just impossible. It looks nice, I guess, but this cave served absolutely no one. Never before has a dungeon, if I can even call it that, felt so obligatory. So much like, oh, I guess we need a cave for a rock Pokemon, huh? Just uninspired and lazy, one of the worst areas in Galar, I'm willing to go that far. When we get to Hisui, things get even more tricky, because with the new founded open world or zone style of games, the caves of old have truly faded away. There still are caves and caverns, don't get me wrong, but they're nothing as massive as what previous games had, and as I mentioned with the Sword and Shield DLC, they're also much less annoying. But there is always one that's the worst, and my vote goes to the cave system of the Alabaster Icelands. Now, this idea, the concept behind it, is super cool. Secret ice caverns hidden underneath the frozen land is such an awesome idea, it really deserved better. Because in practice, it's so hard to tell how these connect and where exactly you are beneath the ice. I fully understand they don't have their own map, but these tunnels really could have used more recognizable features aside from just icy walls to differentiate between them and make you realize, oh, I've been here before. Don't get me wrong, this is a nitpick compared to my problems with earlier caves, but compared to the others from Legends Arceus, these are the problems that come up. And finally we land at Paldea, which similarly is light on caves, although this region does have a few massive ones that are more comparable to caves of old. But without the whole requiring HMs and forced Pokemon encounters, they really aren't as bad. So my vote for worst cave goes to Inlet Grotto, the first cave of the game where you encounter your box legendary and fight with a bunch of Houndour. My biggest problem with this area is mostly in missed opportunities. You can revisit this area after this initial section, but the game never pushes you towards it or anything. How cool would it have been to reward players for returning here out of their own volition with a unique Pokemon? Hell, even just making this the only place where you can find Houndour would have worked. But alas, it wasn't to be. So now, Inlet Grotto is more of a set piece for the game's opening than an actual cave or dungeon, and that's a shame. But hey, those are just my picks. What do you consider the worst caves in Pokemon? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel to stay updated on all my future Pokemon content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.